Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
I'm Matthew.
And I'm Steven, and you're listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, the podcast for pop culture and comic fans just like you.
In this issue, they're heroes in the half shell, and they're green. Also green sometimes, Amadeus Cho. Not green at all, probably as strong as the Hulk. Battle Beast. Prepare yourself, test your might, and prepare for flawless victory. Toasty! It's a turtle-tastic episode, and it's all for you because the Major Spoilers podcast is hovering over your home right now. Fatality! And we're on the
Welcome to issue 1126 of the Major Spoilers podcast. No Mortal Kombat in this episode, unfortunately. But we are certainly glad that you are here to share in some turtle action with us. We reviewed the IDW Collection Volume 1 last year, I believe, and this year we will be taking a look at Volume 2, the next, 400 pages of comics, issues 13 through 20, plus some standalone issues and the history of the Foot Clan and Fugitoid, and so much more. But yeah, we got that going for us. Matthew, is there any big stuff in the news as far as pop culture goes? You haven't seen the Thunderbolts, have you? I'm sorry, the new Avengers, have you?
I have not seen the new Vengeables, but my lady friend is going to see it tonight and is probably going to spoiler me tonight, so that's fine.
Yeah, I finally watched. I finally watched the Captain America Red Hulk thing, the Brave New World. Everybody, I think, put work into it, but a lot of the times I was sitting there going, I think they wanted to develop the characters maybe a little bit more than they did, and so that felt frustrating. And I think that the crux of why Thunderbolt Ross was angry and trying to change wasn't expressed enough or hard enough in the piece. And from the production standpoint, they gotta, I just wish that they could get off this idea of the volume. This may be the last major project that does, volume work. I know they're moving everything to England and everything, but there's just moments where it's like, yeah, you're on a sound stage and it looks super fakey, and it felt like a TV budget movie, which again, I'm not for a low budget movie, although this one was a very high budgeted movie. It just looked fake a lot of times. Like there's this whole scene where they fight in Washington D.C. at the end of the film, where they're near the Potomac and there's all these cherry blossom trees and everything, and it's like, okay, you can literally see where the real set ends and the fake stuff begins, and it's super distracting and super annoying. So I know a lot of people are like, no, this is the low point of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't want to say that I agree, because everybody puts in all the effort that they could into that piece, but it's definitely a 1.5 meatloaf rating for me. Granted, I watched, what was the other Marvel thing that just came out recently that wasn't Thunderbolts? Whatever it was.
Movie or show?
Daredevil. Yeah, I've watched Daredevil.
Born Again.
Yeah, I've watched that. I've really enjoyed that. And yeah, I don't know.
Hallway fights were there?
What's that?
Daredevils are always marked by the hallway fights, right?
Yeah. Well, no, just really long one shot, one take fights.
Okay.
But yeah, they spent a lot of time talking about the Celestial. I mean, the whole movie revolves around the Celestial that was emerging out of the earth. And so that was kind of cool to get some follow up for that and what's been going on with that. But overall, I kind of think that you could probably skip this movie. I ended up paying for it, but it's coming to Disney Plus in a couple of weeks. And so if you have a Disney Plus subscription, it'll be there. So, you're already paying for the service. You might as well watch it if you've got nothing else better to do. I mean, certainly there are worse movies than this. But it's nothing that I was like jumping up and down going, oh, look at that action sequence. or anything like that. I was just like, it's okay. So there you go.
Nice.
Listeners, go ahead.
The fact that it's a sequel to that really, 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 really old Hulk movie in a lot of ways.
And it is, yes. It is very much a sequel to that.
Yeah, 25 years later.
Well, it's a sequel to that. It's a sequel to the what's the one with the Celestials with not the Inhumans movie, the
Eternals.
The Eternals. So it's a sequel to that. And then of course it's a sequel follow-up to the Captain America Winter Soldier show that was on Disney Plus, because it brings back Isaiah Bradley and a bunch of other stuff. And of course, Sam Wilson is the new Cap. So it brings in that aspect of it, but there's just something missing from it. So I don't know. Listeners, what do you think? You can head over to our Discord server. You can join the Discord server absolutely free. There's a link in the show notes. We hope you do come over and hang out with us. But if you have some thoughts about these movies, or really any movie, it doesn't have to be Marvel movie or comic book movies, you can talk about it in our movie channel, or you can just talk with all the other really awesome people who are hanging out in the Major Spoilers Discord all of the time. It's kind of like, when you're at a party and you get drunk and you pass out and you wake up the next morning and you expect the house to be empty, but you go out and everybody is still there. It's kind of like that. That's kind of what the Discord is. The party is going on all the time. Link in the show notes. Go knock yourselves out.
That's a very specific analogy.
Yes, it is. And I'm sure many of our listeners have experienced that. They've probably also experienced reading some comics, which means it's time for us to do a few reviews.
Beautiful.
Matthew, what do you got? Last week, apparently Amadeus Cho is 20 years old, or at least this special is 20 years old.
Amadeus Cho, the character in universe, is, I think, 18 or 19, but
still,
the character of Amadeus Cho has been around for 20 years. First popped up in Amazing Fantasy Volume 2 back in 2005. And this is a story written by his creator, Greg Pak, and taking a look at some of the major eras of Amadeus's evolution over the 20 years, which, my gosh, how can it have been 20 years? I remember when this book came out, I literally bought it and I was like, oh man, this is such a good book. And then, popped up and did all the things. So essentially, Amadeus Cho has existed in three sort of iterations. The original iteration was a genius kid who was 15, 16, and was totally a huge fan of Bruce Banner and the Hulk. So we get a story of that young Amadeus with art by his co-creator, Takeshi Miyazawa. And throughout this whole issue, we have kind of an ongoing arc about Amadeus being frustrated, dealing with his anger, dealing with the fact that, he is Korean American. He's dealing with weird stuff. And it's the Marvel universe. So there's real racism and fantastic racism. And, some of his friends are mutants and they get beaten up. But then we cut to the kind of the second era where he becomes the totally awesome Hulk. You remember the totally awesome Hulk, right?
I do, right? Ponytail and everything.
It was more of like a faux Hawk. But yeah, the Hulk was dead for a minute. Didn't take. Never does. But the Hulk was dead for a minute. And so Amadeus, with a little help from Hercules and some of his friends, became a new Hulk, the totally awesome Hulk, which we were also introduced to his equally genius sister, Maddie. And so we get a story of Amadeus being a Hulk, trying to say, hey, I'm a totally awesome Hulk. I am not driven by rage like these other Hulks. I'm cool. Everything's awesome. But it's not. And he still has some frustrations. He still has issues. We do get some really great insight to Maddie, who I wish we saw more of, honestly. There was a point where she was a major player in his life, and then he became one of the characters who just popped up in teams. Like he and America Chavez and Silk and about four other characters just show up in team after team after team after team. One of those, in the third part of this book, is the Agents of Atlas, but he was also a member of the Champions under the world's worst codename, BRAWN. I don't like the codename Brawn. I do like the design. I do like him deciding, hey, maybe hulking isn't a thing. Maybe I need to not hulk so much. I can just be super strong, but not enormous, right? So he becomes Brawn and a member of the Champions. And of course, still has to deal with his life, has to deal with these issues. And the answer to it all, amazingly, is to take a page from Tony Stark. And so we get to see the debut of the Hulkbuster armor, not to fight a Hulk, but to actually contain Amadeus and keep him from flipping out when he becomes a Hulk, but also making him more useful and more powerful. So I really do hope that we get to see Armodeus doing his thing in the new, upcoming Marvel Universe. I know he is part of the upcoming Imperial stuff, which I don't know if that's related to One World After Doom or not. But here's the thing. Greg Pak is an amazing writer. Greg Pak put a lot of love, and I think more than a little bit of himself, into Amadeus. And having his creator come back and say, all of these things that I didn't write are still important. They still matter. And here's kind of a through line of what I think this character that I created, but everybody gets to work with, is about. It's nice to see definite, you get definite working in of everyone else's ideas. We have multiple art teams. Takeshi Miyazawa does the first. Jethro Morales does the third portion, and Crees Lee handles the middle story with Maddie. But it is really interesting just to see the amount of time and the amount of energy that's gone into this character. And when people talk about, these rotten new characters in comics like Harley Quinn and Daredevil and Deadpool, I'm like, these characters have been around for like 30, 40, 50 years. Ms. Marvel is coming up on a 20th anniversary soon, by the way. But 5 slices of the proverbial meatloaf. It's the whole loaf, all the meat, if you will, for Amadeus Cho 20th anniversary special. It's not a number one because Steven doesn't let me call one-shots number ones.
One-shots are not number ones. Is it worth the $6 though? That's the thing that I wonder. Is it worth the $6?
It is. And the reason why is it's 3 issues of comics. And 3 issues of comics for basically the price of, a regular book is $3.99.
So this is like 64 pages or something like that?
Yeah, it's a big book. It's like $1 more than your One World Under Dooms and your Amazing Spider-Mans. And it really does kind of get into a character on an emotional level the way some of these stories haven't lately. And that's something that I realized I missed reading this book, is getting into Amadeus's head when he's part of the Champions or part of the Ages of Atlas, or a guy showing up in the background of a symbiote fight. It's not the same as when we actually get to have him as the central character and interacting with, his friends like Hercules and the Angel and, what's his name? At one point he had a little coyote puppy that he carried around in his coat. And I don't remember what that coyote puppy's name was. I'm going to say Ted.
Probably. Don't do that. No, not there. I think that's what my dog thinks her name is. No, not there. Please stop. Okay, so that's Amadeus Cho. That was out last week from Marvel Comics. Mm-hmm. I know we can all talk about the good old days of cover prices on comics. Like, what is, though, do you think the sweet spot of prices that you paid for comics over the years? Because when we started, it was like still some of them were 50, 75 cents. And now we're paying routinely $6 a comic. Personally, I feel $1.25 was that sweet spot where I felt like I was getting the best bang for my buck.
Mm-hmm. The buck comics were a lot of fun because it was easy to do the math.
Yeah.
When I started actually buying comics, most of your major titles were 60 cents. So for $5, you could get 4 or 5 books. You have to take in tax, whatever it is. But if they're $1 a pop, you can be like, I have $10. I can buy 9 books. It's fine. You have to take the tax into account. But I feel like when they went to $1.99, that was also okay. Really, I'm okay with anything that's easy to math in my head. $3.99 feels like a lot, but $3.99 books started being a thing 20 years ago.
Yeah, quite a while ago. It was quite a while ago. I guess for me that sweet spot was always like, yeah, I don't mind spending $1.25 for a comic. I feel like I got my money's worth. Now, when I look at a $3.99 comic like this week's Invincible Universe Battle Beast #1, or I look at a $5.99 comic like Amadeus Cho 20th Anniversary Special, I just really kind of feel like, is it worth that much? Because you get to a point where it's like, yeah, that I'll pay, I'll pay $2 for that sandwich, but I don't want to pay $4 for that sandwich. Right? It's somewhere you cross that line. And for me, it was always like $1.25, maybe up to $1.99. I could see that, but even that was getting a little, I don't know. So I just didn't know what you thought was that sweet spot.
I have fond memories of 75-cent comics, and I always feel like that was a real sweet spot for me. But also, what something is worth is a very subjective thing, because I routinely
it's they literally say, hey, this comic is worth $5.99.
Oh, stop it.
That's what the cover price is there for.
And you're saying, is there $5.99 worth of enjoyment in it? Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Well, that's the subjective part, is the enjoyment part.
Coffee.
That's
and people are like, $5 coffee is stupid. And I'm like, that's right. That's why I pay $6.
Yeah.
Or 11.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm really curious what people think that sweet spot. I mean, it gets down to what should we be paying for comics? On the one hand, you can argue that, listen, everybody deserves a living wage. And if comic book sales are slipping so much that you have to increase the price to compensate, then that is one answer you could do. The other answer is we lower the price. We get more comics out to more readers. Let's bring more people into this world. And then that will also result in the same net positive. The other part of me wants to say, listen, make the compromise. You've all got parent companies. Well, maybe some of the smaller ones may not, but you've all got parent companies. Warner Brothers has DC, Disney has Marvel. I'm sure Image has somebody overseeing their stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Probably Universal at this point. But I feel like you're all using this as a loss leader anyway to support the IP for your bigger projects that you hope make more money. Then use it as a loss. Use comic books as a loss. Use that loss for a tax deduction or whatever that you're doing, and however your bean counters want to spin it. But that way you keep that IP alive so that you can go into your big movies and keep the price low, and everybody gets a working wage, and you generate art and you generate fun. And if you get a tax break off your movie, whatever, go for it. But in a perfect universe, that would work. But we are far from a perfect universe. You want to know what else is far from a perfect universe? The Invincible universe, Matthew.
Oh, God.
The Invincible Universe Battle Beast #1 is out this week from Skybound Entertainment. Yes, this takes us back into the Invincible Universe, created by Robert Kirkman, with Ryan Ottley coming along on this ride. And we get I think this is a 4 or 6 issue miniseries that focuses on Battle Beast. You know, the big lion guy that is just like, I am looking for somebody to beat me. And we saw him multiple times in the early series of fighting Mark and his father. In fact, this issue kind of basically picks up from the very first time that we met Battle Beast, and he just tore Mark a new one. And we get a little bit of backstory on where Battle Beast came from, and more importantly, his desire to find the ultimate opponent that can best him. Almost a little bit like Predator, right? Predator is kind of that way where they travel the universe hunting the ultimate prey, and just so happens time and time again they keep coming to Earth because we keep kicking their asses. That's not the case for Battle Beast. Everybody that Battle Beast has ever faced, he has been able to destroy them. And this time he is in a ship where he has killed the crew, but the ship has a sentient AI who is just like, listen, you killed the crew. I was kind of fond of them. I don't like you, but because you're the captain, I guess I got to do what you want. And Battle Beast is like, find me an opponent that can defeat me. And the AI is like, and by defeating you, that means that it will probably have to kill you, right? And Battle Beast is like, yes, of course. Oh, well, then I'll happily comply to that. Let me help you find somebody to kill you. So you've got an AI that is kind of dead bent on finding an opponent that will kill Battle Beast. And Battle Beast's desire to, I don't get the sense in this first issue that Battle Beast is wanting to death by cop himself, where he's like, I want to die in battle. Although I will say, there is a lot of Klingon in Battle Beast.
Yes.
And I think it's always been that way, but here it really comes forward to where I really feel like we're either channeling Worf or we're channeling Kahless or somebody in this, to where Battle Beast is just looking for that glorious death. And he doesn't find it in this first issue. And you kind of want to, I mean, I don't root for the villain, and I don't think anybody should root for the villain. But I think in this case, there's a little bit more nuance to just Battle Beast bad, right? Battle Beast is on a journey to find a little bit more about himself, almost like a little bit like Lobo, right? Lobo is also a little bit inside of Battle Beast. So throw a little bit of Klingon, throw a little bit of Lobo. There you have Battle Beast. And so I thought that this was a fairly rewarding first issue. Obviously, if you were a fan of the Invincible universe, this is the first Invincible stuff that we've really gotten in a decade. I mean, say for the animated TV show, et cetera. And it's very interesting. I enjoyed it a lot. I would give it 4 slices of meatloaf out of 5.
Nice.
It's out this week. Now, there is a, Robert Kirkman loves doing, surprisey things. And so one of the things that's going on with Battle Beast is they have a blind bag program for variant covers. Okay. So what you get, so there's already like 12 that have been announced, but today there are 3 secret covers that are part of this that you might get if you get into this blind bag thing. One of them will include a new printing of Invincible number 19, which is the first appearance of Battle Beast. So you will get that in addition to the regular comic. You will get a new printing of Invincible number 19.
Wow.
Some people, depending on what blind bag, and these are, let's see, what does it say here? While fans already knew the Invincible Universe, Battle Beast featured a first-of-its-kind blind bag program that allows readers a chance to get any of the solicited covers A through I. Today, you may also get one of the other covers, including a special advanced edition of Invincible Universe Battle Beast number 2, meaning that you can read the second issue before everyone else. Or, in partnership with Marvel Comics, you might get a reprint of Marvel Team Up number 14, which many of you will remember was when Invincible and Spider-Man met for the first time. And it's got artwork by Corey Walker in there with that. So, yeah. It's already sold out at the distributor level, which depends on what distributor you're dealing with. But this is a pretty good deal. So you might get a new copy of Invincible number 19 in addition to your blind bag. You might get that Invincible Battle Beast number 2, which will be very interesting because, the internet has a love-hate relationship with spoilers, including when you name your site Major Spoilers. Or you might get that Marvel Team Up number 14 in there. It would be nice if these were like somehow Robert Kirkman had like 10,000 leftover copies of Invincible number 19. Originals. Yeah, of the originals to just slide in there. That would have been cool, but it's not that. So those are the other 3 things that you might get if you go out and get Battle Beast number 1 this week at your local comic book shop. So go check that out and have a little bit of fun with that. If you want, you can buy an electronic version. Now, you won't get any of these other specials. You can buy an electronic version of Invincible Universe Battle Beast number 1 or the Amadeus Cho 20th Century Anniversary Special via our Amazon affiliate link. That means if you go and you buy those, we get a little bit. I think it's like literally a nickel. We get a nickel. And if you buy both of these books, we'll have 2 nickels to rub together. And you know what they say about having 2 nickels to rub together.
It's not very often, but it's strange that it happened twice.
Yes. So that's what you can do. That's one way you can support us. You can also support us by going out and just sharing the good news, going out and retweeting our posts, going out and sharing this podcast, telling people that you like or that are like-minded. Hey, if you listen to the Major Spoilers podcast, share the show with them, share the show with just, people that are like-minded. There are definitely going to be people that you just don't go up to the stranger on the bus and go, have you listened to the Major Spoilers podcast? It's the greatest thing in the world. Here, let me give it to you right now. Don't just go up to a stranger and do that, because that's going to backfire. Okay. And Matthew knows that by firsthand.
Dude, that's how I got married.
Yeah. See, don't let that happen to you. You may end up married to Matthew. You may end up married to Matthew. The other way that you can support this show and everything that we do in the Major Spoilers Podcast Network is to become a patron over at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. A couple of bucks a month, $2 a month if you want, or $5 a month gets you access to the Major Spoilers Podcast pre-show, where this week I share why I'm all out of patience. And surprisingly, it's not because of Matthew. How do you get that? Well, you go to patreon.com/Major Spoilers, sign up for the $5 a month membership. You get up to 4 bonus episodes at the silver level membership each week, or each month, I should say, not 4 episodes per week, but 4 episodes per month. If you sign up at the gold level, you may get up to 8 bonus episodes per month, depending on what other bonus stuff we've got going on. And I know, Matthew, you're sitting there in this economy. How can I afford?
Actually, I'm sitting here going, that was 3 shots at me in 5 minutes. I'm just sad.
I mean, look at the bargain. What a bargain. Just imagine all the shots I could be taking at Matthew when you become a patron over at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Listen, maybe you just want something for free in this economy. You can go over to patreon.com/Major Spoilers, sign up for free, and you get access to the Major Spoilers Book Club. Actually, you don't even have to sign up for free. You can just go over to patreon.com/Major Spoilers and get access to our monthly book club chat, where Dr. Bradley, Will, and I sit down and we talk about a book that we're reading for the month. This month, the book club is by T. King Fisher, and it is, The Twisted Ones? I believe it is The Twisted Ones. And it is a fascinating horror story, although I will say that Brad and I may have an argument coming up in a couple of weeks when we sit down and share our thoughts about the book. But you can go and listen to our discussion about slow horses. You can go listen to my interview with Christy Rose about the Samantha True mystery novel series. So much more, totally free, over there at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Time for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, there was a time, Matthew, when I loved the Ninja Turtles, right? I was going through, now I was not a big Marvel Comics fan at this time, but I found this black and white, because there was, in the comic store that I used to go to in Topeka, there was a corner that was like the independent rack, and it was basically just all these comics just crammed in there. But, I found my love of the X-Mutants in there. I found Amazing Heroes? Is that the one? No, from Alliance Comics.
Hero Alliance.
Hero Alliance, that's what it was. I found Hero Alliance there, and I also found, crammed in there one time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I was so fascinated by this thing where there's these Ninja Turtles, and the art is kind of crude and black and white, but they're, slicing up these other ninjas, and I picked up a copy, and then it sent me on a journey to all the other comic book stores in my, 50-mile radius of my home, where I'd go to Lawrence, and I'd go like, oh, here's this other issue of this Ninja Turtle series. And so I started reading that. And then there was a cartoon series announced, and I was super excited. And it wasn't the same as the comic book, but it was still kind of fun. And then there was an arcade game that I just wasted so much money on. I eventually finished. No, that was RoboCop that I eventually finished. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles I never finished, but me and my friends living in the dorms, we almost beat that thing. But I never, after that original Eastman and Laird black and white series, I never really got back into comic book versions of the Turtles. And then, some decades ago, IDW Publishing started to say, hey, we're going to do our own Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. Not the stuff that you're getting from Archie, not the cartoony stuff, but this is our take on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, essentially kind of a reboot.
Right.
And I thought the last time we talked, I thought the first, 12 issues were good. And now we are into a second volume where Kevin Eastman is joined by Tom Waltz and Mateus Santaluco and Eric Burnham and Andy Kuhn on art. Well, really a lot of people on art.
Right.
But we got to continue that story. And I guess for me, reading this brought back a lot of those old memories because, oh, yes, I remember Fugitoid. Oh, yes, I remember Baxter Stockman and the Mousers and, the Battle, no, not Battle Planet. Now I forgot what the name of Krang's battle machine is. But, you got Casey Jones, you got all these other people, and you get familiar stories that are changed, I think, more for the time period and more to clean up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But this second volume to me felt like going back to those good old days. Now, I will admit, I've never watched the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies because, quite frankly, and I know people love them at the time and still today, to me, they still look dumb. So I've never watched those. I've never watched those live action movies. Now I've watched a lot of the animated movies, but for some reason going into the second volume really felt like comfort food.
This very much feels to me like Ultimate Marvel felt
a little bit, yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Except for me,
except you hate Ultimate. You hate the Ultimate Universe.
Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that I can't, say, hey, this is what it did. But more importantly, I feel like this one is kind of a better use of concepts, and it throws in some things that really, for me, deepen bits and pieces of it and also make it markedly different. I want to say the IDW run started in like 2010 or 2011.
Yeah, it was around the same time that we started up, yeah.
Yeah, and it was before the cartoon movie, or maybe the cartoon.
So I
series.
I should also say, and I don't know if I didn't say this before, Matthew. This month is also the 41st anniversary of that original printing of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles back in 1984.
Oh man!
How do I know that? Because Kevin Eastman sent me an email. Hey, Stephen, as we celebrate the 41st. Anniversary this month of the release of the first printing of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Book 1 in May of 1984. We're offering I thought Kevin Eastman was sending me a personal email. This is just hey, we want to get you a Kawabunga signed or unsigned version. Click the link for more. Oh,
right. And it's just kind of
never meet your heroes, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, I've met my heroes.
I mean, you talk to me every week, so Anyway, go on with what you were saying about the Ultimate Universe and the Ultimate Ninja Turtles. And
I don't think I will. That was mean. Okay, so the ultimate take on the Mutant Ninja Turtles, where we have seen a lot of, I don't want to say barnacles, but we've seen a lot of different takes, like the cartoon version of Krang. And I think actually that's where Krang comes from, to be honest. But
I think so.
That wacky cartoon Krang with the big creepy guy with the pointy head, that is something that it seems like it would be hard to tie into a series that is trying to do, kind of, I don't want to say authentic, but trying to tie into, actual stories that make sense, actual, pseudo-Japanese history. We do get looks at things like the origins of the Shredder, and how Splinter becomes a guy, because depending on the origin, either Splinter is a man turned to a rat or a rat turned into a man. In this story, he's technically a rat who may be a reincarnation.
Well, and that was
an Edo period guy.
That was kind of the big reveal at the end of the last volume, right? Was that Splinter and his 4 kids have been reincarnated into the Turtles, or at least their spirits have inhabited the Turtles and Master Splinter's body.
Right. And that feels interesting to me because it manages to take the supernatural elements of it all, but still kind of ground it to they're also, and I know you love street level. You like to say this is a street levels. And
it is. And that's why I said I wasn't reading Marvel before, because this was always originally a riff on Daredevil, right? Where the ooze that gave Matt Murdock his powers and his blindness also mutated the turtles. And so I dig that, right? And here you had the guy who would become a Splinter or whoever touching the turtles and getting the mutagen stuff. I as much as I'm fine with reincarnation and I don't have a problem with reincarnation, I think we talked about it last time. I'm not a big fan of reincarnation for the turtles in this series. That whole we've done this fight again and we'll do it again, which of course the Last Ronin kind of plays upon as well, that we're repeating the same thing over and over again. I mean, I get it, but I don't know. That is the one part of this whole thing that is just like, I believe that turtles have mutated from an ooze, and I believe that there's a portal to another universe where brain slugs are living inside robot bodies, but this whole reincarnation stuff, that's a little bit too far out there for me.
That's you're too far. Yeah. And it does take bits and pieces of things. We get a new take on the character of Karai, who I think comes out of the animated movie from like 2020. And you see one of the characters from the 2003 cartoons pop up. And it's really kind of taking all of this and trying to say, okay, we've seen 15 different runs on this. We've seen the cool, wacky, Archie cartoony. We've seen the television cartoony. We've seen Corey Haim beating somebody up because he couldn't use his nunchucks, so he used a couple of sausages tied together. And this really feels like we're taking all of that, and we're taking the weird and the offbeat and the sacred and the profane and all of the blebity blabbity, and we're just going to try and streamline it all together so we get an explanation for why Casey Jones acts like a teenage idiot. Because he is a teenage idiot. And throughout this volume, we do get kind of a new look at April, where April is actually undercover at Stock Tech for like several issues. And I think one of them is her own one-shot.
Yes.
Where she's, trying to figure this stuff out. And then we get Slash, who I think comes from the Archie cartoon or the cartoony Archie series, where he was like a fifth turtle who was all evil and bleh. I had a toy.
Yeah, I don't remember where he came from. Yeah. But I do remember when he showed up in the comics.
He's my favorite.
Yeah, you do like him? Okay.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a black mask. But yet you get all of these things, and it's played a little bit for melodrama, but we also get really strong looks into the minds of the turtles because everybody knows the theme song. And the theme song can really kind of pigeonhole all four turtles into their own little thing, which is why, at the end, you mentioned The Last Samurai, or is it The Last Ronin? Yeah.
Yeah, The Last Ronin.
At the end of The Last Ronin, when you find this old, grizzled warrior and you realize this is Mikey the party dude, it's like a what? You almost can't believe it. And that is something that you really get here, where there are moments where Donatello is like, yeah, my brothers are not much for the personal hygiene, but it feels legitimate. It feels like something that's coming out of being the smart one of these kids who lives in the sewers, and you're smart enough to know, hey, do we smell bad, guys? I really like the character takes, and I really like the way they lock down these archetypical characters and give them, new faces. They give them new aspects, which is awesome.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned before, this pointy-headed Krang, they actually bring in the pointy-headed Krang because in one of the, I think it's the, not the origin of the Foot Clan, but it's definitely, it's part of the origin of the Foot Clan, but also in the Krang one-shot, where we learned that Krang's father just hated him, but his body was the pointy-headed version that we see in the cartoon series, and the Krang that we see in the comic books is a much, more nefarious-looking person in a trench coat until, you reveal that it's an alien inside. I thought that was rather funny and a nice touch. I still, though, I know the cartoon series went into, different dimensions. I'm surprised we haven't seen, I'm sure at some point, not now, but at some point we'll see a Yojimbo crossover happen. Yeah, because that happened in the cartoons, right? And so, these things, as you said, is kind of like the ultimate version of the Turtles. And I like it. I'll be honest. I like this a lot. And, I will continue reading it. Rob Rasmussen, who is one of our players on the Critical Hit podcast, he loves this IDW series. He just thinks that this whole thing is the greatest Turtles since that first issue debuted 41 years ago. And so I kind of agree with him. And I know that Dr. Brad Will, another regular at the Major Spoilers, has also said that he enjoys reading this IDW series and has gone back and read it at different points just because it is so enjoyable. And I think they really hit it. I think they really hit it in the right spot. And of course, having Kevin Eastman on board to say, yes, let's do this. I don't think he writes everything. I think it's Tom Waltz that does most of it, with him just kind of signing off on a lot of stuff. But still, I like this series that IDW is doing. I know Last Ronin came out of nowhere and people just, it took IDW by storm. And so I'm glad to see that that's going. And I know that they've rebooted the Turtles recently as well. But going back to this run of the Turtles, I think right now, 20 issues in, it's still very fun. It's still very, very exciting. It's still a page turner. Now, getting into the space opera thing with the princess and everything, I'm fine with that. It starts to border on the ridiculous where it's like, just give me my street heroes fighting foxes and one-eyed cats in the alley. And they're like, no, it's going to be space things. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
And that is, I think, one of the best parts of the Turtles is, they say that the best properties are very elastic. And so you can take the moments where, hey, there's this alien space booger and he rides around in this creepy looking robot. And you can say, okay, well, can we ground that? Yes. That robot is the body of his greatest enemy. And he wanted to make sure that guy knew, even in death, who was the smart one. That's horrifying.
Yeah.
But it's also tonally dead solid perfect. The origin of the Foot Clan has the explanation of, why do they call themselves the Foot? It's not just, a Frank Miller joke about the hand. It's literally a character whose foot was bleeding and rotting and, about to fall off. And he stepped onto the snow and left the imprint and decided that this would be his imprint on the world. That's horrifying. That's just darf.
I will say that because we're bouncing around between the main series, issues 13 and 20 in this volume, and the Casey Jones, April, Fugitoid, Krang, and Baxter Stockman micro series, as well as the Secret History of the Foot Clan, the art is all over the place. Some art I like a lot more than others. I like the Secret History of the Foot Clan art a lot. And then I also, for some reason, I don't know if they switched artists in the last couple of issues of the main series or not, but something became a little bit more expressive and rubbery. And I dug that, but also still retaining a lot of detail. So the art is, you're not going to have consistent art through this volume, and you shouldn't because there's so many different people involved on that. But it wasn't really a problem for me.
Yeah, they did. There is an artist switch from issue 16 to 17.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Because Tom Waltz and Andy Kuhn were doing 16. Then that Fugitoid series, or the Fugitoid, you say micro series, it's just a one shot. It's Fugitoid #1.
Yeah, so yes, well, it's Fugitoid. So in this micro series, this is the weird thing about it. They grouped them together as a series, even though it was just Fugitoid #1 or Krang #1. They were this, whatever, I forget what the main title of it was, but it was all part of, like, the Casey Jones, April, all of these were kind of packaged together as one series.
Yeah, and that's because modern comic book readers were idiots, and that's fine.
Yeah, but yeah, and then of course the other thing is, you could just read issues 13 through 20 and you'd be fine with it, because some of the stuff, like the Casey Jones one, where you find out about why his dad is abusive and what happened to his mother, etc. That's a story that takes place in between, like, issues 14 and 15.
Right.
And it adds a lot more depth to what you're reading, as opposed to wasting an entire TMNT issue on that. You can tell it in this in between issue.
Right. And you can really focus in on the characters. In the last volume, the micro series issues had the four turtles and Splinter. So
Yeah.
basically, individual stories for them in the midst of the ongoing narrative. And I like that. It's when you go in the Mary Tyler Moore show and it's like, here's an episode all about Rhoda. Now we know now in retrospect, it's a backdoor pilot for Rhoda's own show. But it's also nice to have just that focus. You can take that moment and say, what do we know about Geordie LaForge? What do we know about Leonardo? What do we know about Baxter Stockman? And, you have that ability to have the character. I hate the phrase, the villain should be the hero of their own story. But the character should have a reality. They should have, a psychological heft. They should feel like a human or an inhuman or a brain in the body of their dead dad, whatever you want to call it. But they should feel like someone that you can kind of either hate or maybe feel for or despise and be like, I see why this character became, for instance, the Shredder. How did Hamato Yoshi become a rat? You have these moments, and even when you're dealing with absurd things like Hamato Yoshi becoming a rat, this series makes it dramatic. It makes it approachable. It makes it feel like, I don't want to say real, but it makes it feel like an ongoing story in a universe that has kind of a cohesive element. Even, crazy aliens from space coming down.
Yeah,
and
makes
Casey
sense.
standing there and going, oh, what's that? It makes sense in context.
Yeah, it really does. I think for me, at the end of the day, I would recommend picking up this volume. If you read the first volume, if, as Matthew said, you want an Ultimate Universe take on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, this is a very good continuation. I wasn't bored at all. I will admit that there are times where you get into a big space battle fight, and I'm just like, I can skip these, 4 or 5 panels per page and still get the gist of what's going on and still be very much entertained. Kind of like you are when you're watching your streaming show and you keep looking down at your phone and scrolling through there.
You your phone while you're streaming?
I mean, I don't, but people do. I'm using that as an analogy. It's kind of that same way. So for me, this is a strong buy recommendation to pick up the second volume of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the IDW collection. This one was released in 2016, though I do think it is still in print. There's a link in the show notes to our Amazon affiliate link, and you can pick it up there for an amazing price of $50 for the hardcover, or if you have Kindle Unlimited, $0.
Nice. Honestly, I would say it's worth the $50. I'm going to give it my probably not as rare as it should be rush right out into buying frenzy, because this is really good stuff. And if you love the Turtles, everything you love will be celebrated in here. If you're looking for a way into the Turtles, maybe start with the first volume.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You're going to want this book too. And that, I think, is what puts it all together. When you talk about your absolute DC, when you talk about your ultimate Marvel, when you talk about, the Earth 1 to Earth 2 conversion back in 59, the whole point is to bring what you love about something to a whole new audience. And this IDW continuity is probably the most cohesive of any ongoing Turtle stories to date. And yes, I read them on, but more importantly, it's really likable. It's really well done. And even if you're that one weird guy who wanted more of Eric Larson's Turtles book from 1997, there's stuff in here that evokes that, and you will find the things you liked there in here.
Yeah. Every time I read this, so right around this same time, probably not around issue 20, but by the time we get into volume 3, this is right around the time that IDW decided that they would branch out and do IDW Entertainment, which would include IDW Games. And so they would do their Kickstarter for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, which I have, and I love that Teenage Mutant. I really feel bad for IDW Games and IDW. I mean, there's some shenanigans stuff going on, behind the scenes stuff that involves people cheating the company. But IDW Games, when they did the Batman animated series and the Ghostbusters and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Batman the Animated Series, those games, if you can get your hands on them, a lot of fun if you like tactical games. Just a lot of fun. And every time I read these books, I get a hankering for breaking out those boxes of turtles and setting them up and playing. Yeah, because they follow a lot of the storylines right from the comics. Right. So, there's a whole thing where, which is the angry one, Raphael?
Raphael is he's cool, rude.
Yeah, he goes out on his own in one of the adventures in the game to go fight Casey's dad. And so there's like two games going on at the same time. One where you're over on one panel fighting Casey Jones' dad while the other three players are over fighting foot soldiers. And then if both of you win that battle, then the next one has the two maps being brought together so you guys can rejoin one another. And it's just really fun. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's really cool. Sometimes it's infuriating, but the way that the game mechanics work, I like a lot. We have a playthrough of that. If you want to see some of it over on our Major Spoilers video channel, you can find that over on YouTube. Go back into the old Munchkin Land games or just type in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Munchkin Land, and you will find those episodes, probably Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Munchkin Land Major Spoilers video, and you will find those games that we played. Brian, Brad, and I think Brad's son Ian, we all got in on that action. Maybe Rob too, because this was before Rob moved away. A lot of fun. So
I was not invited.
No, you live too far away. So that wraps it up for this issue. Thank you so much for listening. If you found any value in this show, we'd like for you to join us over at our Patreon page, patreon.com/Major Spoilers, where you will find even more fun, including the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show that I talked about before. Next week on the show, I think I know that there is a new Huck series coming out, but I also believe Netflix is still doing something with Mark Millar's Huck. And so we're going to be talking about next time on the Major Spoilers podcast. Why? Because we know that you love comics. We do too. And we will talk with you soon.
If I had the X-ray vision of a Superman, I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, he kicked my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I back and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. If I'm Stark Raven rich like a man of iron, I might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the hard code to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read up on all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast. Being shot up in a fun bee in the Middle East with a gang sign throwing soldier. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah. What a major spoiler. Whoa. What a major spoiler.
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.